So let's see here. I think we're recording now. And yeah, Jason, feel free to take it away.
All right. Hey, thanks for having me today. You'll probably figure out very shortly if you haven't already. I'm a bit under the weather, but we're going to power through this and it should be fine. I apologize in advance if I hack up along here and there. I'll do my best to mute myself. Yeah, my name is Jason. I work for UW Madison's Division of Extension, and I have been doing WordPress development as pretty much the core function of my job for about almost 15 years now. I would say I'm primarily a plugin developer, but I do plenty of other roles as necessary. So today what we're going to talk about is our major project that we've been working on for the past 2 years, which is converting our network of sites for use in the block editor. And I will warn you now that this is very much a case study and not a how-to. Hopefully, if you have to do some project similar to this, you can figure a thing, you can take some pieces of it or whatever, or hit me up if you have, questions. But this has been the highest priority that I've been working on for the past year and a half or so. And I thought it would be an opportunity to share it with some folks. So a little bit about our situation. We run approximately 400 WordPress websites that span 3 multi-site instances. And the oldest sites on this network are 14 years old. So we've got a lot of content here. And even the content itself is older than that because I was around this at that time. And I helped move that content from other CMSs and previous things into WordPress. So like the content lived in WordPress for 14 years, but it's even older than that. Our environment consists of 153 plugins at press time and 2 custom themes. And one of the catches and things that the biggest things to deal with was we had made heavy use of custom shortcodes for everything. Basically, the editor was very difficult to work in, but shortcodes were this, magic solution to everything, at least from our perspective. So you want columns, those are shortcodes. You want buttons, those are shortcodes. You want a list of posts, yeah, and some people, depending on how much effort people put into it, things got kind of crazy, and they would put, a button shortcode inside a callout box shortcode inside a column 1/2 shortcode, and it worked. It worked great for 10 years, but when the block editor was coming around, we're like, this is going to be much better. I'm very excited about making the change. Unfortunately, I'm also very nervous about making the change. So in January 2021, we decided that, WordPress declared that, hey, support for the classic editor is going away at the end of 2021, so you better make a move. So that's lit a fire under us, and we had to figure out what we were doing. So this is, we experimented very briefly previously just to see what's going on, and wow, we have no idea what's going on. So it started with just learning how the block editor works. How is data stored? Is there any way to convert content? How do you develop blocks, etc.? And we really were starting from pretty much scratch in January 2021. We figured that there were 2 primary components to the task. One is just making sure our complex environment was, ready for the block editor, which means updating our theme to make sure that we had CSS to style all the blocks. We needed a theme.json file. We wanted to come up with some custom styles that, better illustrate, like take the core blocks, add some styles to it that, would work well in our theme. And then a lot of plugin updates. The biggest one we're going to talk about, is like shortcodes going to blocks. And I just wanted to throw this thing out here. The isAdmin flag is something that we made heavy use of for 13 years in order to like split backend functionality from front end functionality. So one of the first things we had to do once we started like working with the block editor was go back through and undo all of that, because when you're like it's not black and white anymore. Like you're in the back end, you're working on a block. It doesn't know that. It thinks you're on the front end. So one of the first things we had to do was go back and unoptimize all of our plugins so that they were no longer front end and back end logic splits, for performance reasons. And then when it came to converting our content, like I said, there's lots of it. We had no idea how much we could automate, and how is this supposed to work? Do we run a batch script once? Does it happen, when someone visits the site? Like, how is this going to work? And like I mentioned earlier, our shortcode soup, like one of our biggest challenge was, what are we going to do? Like, we got to get away from shortcodes. We're not going to the block editor and saying, oh, put a shortcode block here that says column 1/2, and then make all your content. Like, we need to make this, our primary goal is making the front end match the back end as much as possible. So we had to figure out what to do with our massive pile of shortcodes. Now, it turns out some of them would translate quite well to core blocks. So core provided blocks for columns, RSS, buttons, social media links, all things that we had custom shortcodes for. Gravity Forms is just an example of a third-party block that, like they have a short code, and if you edit your content in the block editor, like, ta-da, it will turn it into a Gravity Forms block for you. I was expecting that we'd find a lot more of those. That literally is the only one that ended up doing that in our environment. And then again, we had to come up with a lot of custom blocks. We've got our own flavor of, like accordions and event calendars, and hey, how can I show my latest headlines here from a category of a certain post type? So again, all custom blocks. Some things, if we decided that we could keep as short codes, if they're not used frequently, and it's not worth the effort to put them into short codes if it's used very rarely. So like we use Search and Filter Pro in a handful of places. They did not provide a block. We weren't going to make one. So yeah, we do use a couple short code blocks in a few places. And finally, some things we just had to decide if we're going to like drop support for them. Like, look, this is a big change. We can't necessarily bring everything we brought over, so let's get rid of it. So we ended up, luckily, we only ended up dropping support for one thing, which was our slideshow plugin, which again, used an incredibly complex short code in order to output what slides should be appearing on the page. All right, a little bit about custom block development. This is the solution that we went with. So we went with Advanced Custom Fields Pro. And the reason for that is we are very heavily invested in advanced custom fields. We use it for widgets, settings pages, plugin development. We use it for everything. We're lifetime license holders, so that part helped. And we just love the support we've got. We loved how easy it made it to do blocks. And frankly, at the time, I've learned a bit since then, but I had no idea how to do anything with React. I'd never used a build process with anything, so it's like, hey, at the time we thought we had 1 year to figure out how to get there. Like, this is going to be our easiest solution. Let's go with this. Now, if I was going to do it all over, starting with the site now, I might do more, more native block development. But I might not even. It would have to depend on the specifics. But we went with Advanced Custom Fields Pro for all of our custom block development. I still recommend it highly. So this is just an example of, we used to have a short code that would output, the calendar from our Event Magic plugin. And this is the part where we started getting excited about the project. After I learned how to register a block with advanced custom fields, I was able to do something like this for most of our short codes in, I feel like it's without exaggeration to say 15 minutes or something to turn a short code into a custom block. Really did not take long at all. And this is where we're like, all right, this is awesome. This is great. I'm loving this. This is where we got super stoked. And here's some decisions that we made, and I'm emphasizing we because there's 1,000 different ways to do this. And I know there's a couple of Whisk Web folks here now, so like you are in a very similar boat as us, but I know that most people, you develop a site, you hand it off to the client or whatever, and it doesn't live for 14 years, you're gone. And so we had a very different style environment. So we made the following decisions. We said that once a site will, of our 300 or 400 sites will switch one at a time. At least for now. We'll see at the end if we have to just like, all right, everybody who didn't go yet, you're going. But for now, we're doing it site at a time. One of the biggest reasons for that is it is a scary and complex thing for the end user, the people who manage content on these sites. So we do hand holding with them. We talk to them. We made sure we verified that they've taken some training or watched a tutorial, attended a webinar, that this isn't just we're not just throwing sites to the block editor and saying, hey, that little pop-up that says welcome to the block editor, that should teach you everything you need to know, because that's obviously not viable. So there's all sorts of ways to do it. You can make a solution where an individual posts are like, hey, I want to start editing this post with the block editor, or I want to change my pages to the block editor, but not my posts. Or this would be a bad idea probably, but it's like, hey, I want the block editor. Any post that I write will use blocks, but Joe isn't ready yet, so he's going to keep using the classic editor. So we made the decision, the entire site switches at once. And from that day going forward, any new content that is written is done with the block editor. Now, that's the easy part. The hard part, as I've alluded to, is what do we do about 14 years of content, thousands of posts. I haven't actually counted them, but I know that some sites have 1,000 posts. So it's a lot of posts, a lot of pages, a lot of articles, a lot of events, a lot of everything. So we decided that why mess with a good thing? And the vast majority of these pages and posts probably are never going to be edited or touched. So we made the decision that we are only going to muck with this content when someone goes to edit it. So if your site, oh, hey, your site uses the block editor now, until you go and edit, your About Us page, nothing's changed, doesn't change the database. It looks exactly the same as it always did. It's only when you go to edit it that our stuff kicks in and says, all right, let's see what we can do to help make this a smoother process. Now, some of you might be saying, Jason, you're an idiot. There's just a little convert to blocks button that appears when you, if you go to the block editor from a classic site. And that is technically true, but it is abysmal at shortcodes. It is even worse at nested shortcodes. And like we said, we had a lot of those. And like I said, literally some of the HTML there had existed for 25 years or something. And this convert to blocks really expects clean, valid markup. Otherwise, it's like, hey, you've got a DD tag somewhere in there. We don't have a block for that. So this must just be one giant custom HTML block. So this was just not viable. And finally, it doesn't integrate, with custom page templates, because we had used things like advanced custom fields to create, like a 2-column layout where there's, 2 visual editors. Well, that was just not supported at all with this, native convert to blocks things. I did spend some time trying to tie into it and extend to it. There's a block transformation API, but at least at the time, I found it incredibly inconsistent. I was just tearing what little bit of hair I have left out, because I would literally just do the exact same thing, clone a site 10 times, run the same convert to blocks on the same page a bunch of times, and get different behavior every time. I believe there were race conditions in the API, or the way that it would run at a time. So eventually we said, that is going to be our last resort. We really don't want to make that the focus here. So that is where I spent last summer. I wrote a custom conversion plugin that is largely PHP based. Like I said, I tried integrating it with the block transform API and just was not having success. So it is a very, very, very large project to get this content ready for the block editor. And once again, the script runs the first time a post is to be edited. And one of the other advantages of that I didn't mention before is it's allowed us to do iterative improvements. So like I convert a site with it, oh, it went good. I convert another site like, oh, I just realized that address tags are a problem. Let me go back and figure out a solution for that so that I can figure this out. So that we didn't just, run it over 400 sites and be like, oh, shoot, I wish I did something different. No, it is I'm on, I don't know what version anymore, but like I've made many, many updates in the past year since we started using this. And the fact that content is edited on the fly really lets us take advantage of those iterative improvements. So basically what it does is it puts everything into blocks. It takes that mess of shortcodes we had, and those end up as either some kind of core block, whether it be an embed RSS block or a column block, or it turns things into some of our custom blocks that we developed. Everything else on the page, text, images, those end up in classic editor blocks for now. We'll get to that in a minute. But what it does is it prepares the content for a much, much, much more successful convert to blocks process. And as you can imagine, it makes heavy use of regular expressions and DOM document to parse this out and figure out how this is supposed to work. Yes, I'm very aware that you're not supposed to use regular expressions to parse HTML, but guess what? Our markup was terrible. So it's not like we were working with valid markup and we just had to figure things out. A huge part of this too is we did just-in-time backups, so when the site is about to be edited, then the very first part of the script, hey, let me just snapshot what the content looked like before, and then it's always available off to the side when you're editing the page in the block editor later, so that you can see what it looked like before, in case like, hey, what was going on here? Like, oh, I see why that broke. Let me change this. This link should go there. They didn't close this. These tags were out of order. All that kind of stuff. And one of the big adds too is there's this, you can see a link here that says restore to a pre-block editor state. That is just the undo button. If the script totally bonks your article, you can just click undo conversion or restore to pre-block editor state. It'll fix it, and then we can come in and figure out what's going on. My only regret is that was like the last thing I developed, and I wish I had done that first, because it really would have made my development and testing process take 100 hours less. All right, so what does it look like to convert a short code to block markup? So for a core block, just here's a brief example. We had, a CETS embed RSS shortcode. And it turned out, I'm not sure how much of a coincidence it is, that the core RSS block used literally the exact same set of options as us. Now, this was something that we had in the repo and stuff, so I'm not sure if someone found it and used ours for inspiration or we just all landed on the same thing. But something like this, there's easy matchups to, to a core block. Some of them got a little more complicated, like we had our button short code worked that it would just process anything that was in between button short codes. It would look for links, turn them into buttons. Well, the markup for those blocks is a little more complicated. So it would have to parse those out, loop them back, create a buttons container to put individual button in, and go from there. So some of them got a little more fancy. And then here's just an example using convert shortcodes to block markup in Advanced Custom Fields Pro. So this is what the markup looks like for ACF Pro. So again, like we would have to take the arguments that were in the shortcode, extract them, put them into this data array inside so that it could be passed to the block for processing in the same way. Now, sometimes we added new features and we would set defaults and do all kinds of things like that. But basically, this would clean up all the shortcodes and turn them into custom blocks or core blocks. One of the other most important parts of this, as mentioned before, like our markup is dirty. It was super dirty. People would paste stuff in. Like every day I would, like do test runs of new sites and be like, how is this possible? Where did they even get this from? Like, what did they copy and paste this from? And, in the classic editor, it worked fine. It just goes in and, there's stuff in there. But that doesn't work so well in the block editor, in a custom HTML block. So because we were in control of this environment, and again, this is all everyone's specific to your specific environment, we knew that there was no valid reason for anyone to have a header tag in our content unless they pasted it in. We weren't styling it. We weren't doing anything with it. So we would kind of strip some of those things out. And then empty tags are the bane of my existence. It's unbelievable how many empty tags people had on their stuff. And so again, we just had to remove all those over and over and over again until they were all gone. Because again, like you have a random EM open tag and an EM close tag, boom, here's your custom HTML block that's just an empty tag. But by doing all this, we were able to like really get people's content cleaned up in a way that it could actually, that convert to blocks functionality on screen could actually do something meaningful with it. So let's just walk you through a little bit about what it looks like from the user's perspective. So the very first time, let's say I've got this page, it used, column shortcodes and advanced post list shortcode, and I go to edit it. Again, everything's going to end up in either, in some type of block, with the vast majority of content ends up in a classic editor block. But in here you can see the classic editor block is inside of column blocks, and it respected the shortcode arguments for how big the column was. We just mapped that back out. And boom, all of a sudden I've got classic editor in columns blocks. Already, this is a pretty big improvement. It's way better than a complete jumbled mess of shortcode blocks that just don't do anything reasonable at all. When you're in your post listing or page listing site in the dashboard, we also provided an overview of like, hey, this is still using the classic editor, but again, edit it and you will start to use the blocks for it. Or like, hey, this page has already been converted to blocks. And one thing I added too is like, I feel like classic editor blocks existing, like I don't like that they're there. I would rather people not have them. So I just also added this little call out. It's like, you made this blocks, but like it's 17 classic editor blocks. That's not really blocks. Come on. So we'll talk a bit more about that final conversion in a second as well. So what you see here is a banner that appears in the editor the very first time someone goes to edit something they wrote in the classic editor, and now they're at the block editor. So this big pop-up shows up and says, hey, dude, this article has been automatically prepared for use in the block editor. And then just obviously helpful links. You can see them. Do you want to view it to make sure it didn't get totally borked? If it did get borked, this will send me an email to that's pre-filled with a link to the page so I can go figure it out for you. And in the meantime, you probably want to undo the conversion process if it's that broke so that your page isn't broke. So that's one banner. And then the second banner is, hey, we've identified that this page contains one or more classic editor blocks. You probably want to convert them all to blocks. So now that we've got, like I said, we split the content up into several discrete classic editor blocks. Now someone could go like, I want to convert this classic editor block into blocks. Or what we did is we added a just a shortcut that says like, click this button to just convert all the classic editor blocks on the page. And it just does that and lets you know how it went. So what you see here is this is after it's that same page, but after somebody has clicked the convert all classic editors to blocks. Now it does tie into the core's existing convert to blocks button. It basically, you know, like now that we've cleaned up the content, now that we've put shortcodes in, put things into separate blocks, now that we've done all that, now we can finally use the convert to blocks, which still has a few known issues, which annoy me. But I don't know enough about that part of WordPress to fix it. Things just small examples of what that thing doesn't do. A heading that is centered will no longer be centered. An image that was resized using the drag and drop resizer in the classic editor is just a ginormous image. It does not respect some of those things. But other than those couple known issues, we have taken dirty old markup that was shortcode soup, and with just you click edit and you click convert all these editors, and boom, now we have a full-fledged block editor compatible page that uses a mix of core blocks, custom blocks, and is pretty ready to go for people. And I think the biggest testament to how well this ended up working for us is that literally nobody yet has clicked that thing that says, hey, this broke my page or post, I need help with it. So the fact that we've like thousands and thousands of pieces of content have been converted already, and literally nobody yet has felt that it was broken to the point that they had to say, I need help with this. So that is the biggest testament I have to how well this seemed to be working. So just a couple final takeaways. This is a major project. I need to be clear about that. Like this was literally everything I did all last summer and still ongoing, still doing iterative improvements. This is the conversion alone process has just been ginormous. If you can avoid this, please, I strongly encourage you to do it. If this can be a time to just like, hey, we could help you convert that site, or let's use this as an opportunity to make a new site, maybe get some more billable hours in there, maybe just not have to do this. However you want to do that, great. We could not do that because just a year previously, we had just rolled out a complete new like web strategy with consolidated sites. Everyone had moved sites around and done all sorts of stuff. It was completely off the table that we'd be like, hey, you know how you rebuilt all those sites last year? We're going to do it again. That was just not on the table for us. And if timing had worked differently, we may have been, you know, if we were ready for the block editor at the time that new web strategy needed to be deployed, it would have been a fantastic time to rebuild everything from scratch. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. And then, of course, one of the main reasons for us, especially, and the reason I said this is a case study and not a here's how you do it, was we had a very unique situation, a very unique environment, a very custom environment that I've been working on for 15 years or whatever. There was no way I was going to be able to just like find a solution or a plugin or something that like fixed it for us. Everyone's coming from different stuff, going to different stuff. You're going to have to do something custom unless you're using the world's most popular theme. I don't know if you're like Elementor or Divi and someone has, and I don't use those. So maybe somebody has done a nice, good process for those to convert them to blocks. You would have to check. But for us, again, we didn't have an off-the-shelf environment, so there was no way we were going to have an off-the-shelf solution. So that's what I had. I'd be happy to take any questions before Nate gets started. My pleasure, Andrea. I thought you might be interested, as I think you work on the Whisk Web kind of stuff, where you have an incredibly similar environment to ours. And I'm very familiar with the page builder. And yeah, this sounds very much, that's why I invited Nick here, by the way, because I know that you guys have a similar project that you might be approaching. So I just wanted to share that. So yeah. Yeah, it was a big one, and I'd be happy to talk more too if you wanted any more insights on how this went.
I think just hearing about how the user experience has been and how you were able to build things in was great. And so I think that's the biggest hurdle, is converting people who are used to the classic editor to the blocks editors. It's a different kind of jump.
I will say I feel like for me, the learning curve almost seemed harder than I feel like our actual content providers, largely because I'm just like, I live and breathe WordPress every day. You know, for me, it was such a ginormous change, and I don't use any of these other systems. So many other people would come back like, oh, so it's just like Wix. oh, so now it's like Emma email templating. Oh, now it's like this other thing. Now it's like SharePoint. I'm like, I don't know any of those things. So, but it sounds like it's not too different from those. So for me, it was brand new, and I felt I had to learn every single nook and cranny of it, you know. Whereas these people are like, yo, I just need to post a PDF. It's pretty easy. I can do that. So yeah, thankfully, people have adopted to it pretty easily.
Any other
Awesome.
questions?
Any other
questions?
Yeah. Any other questions before we get to Nate's presentation? Sounds good. Well, you can see my handle down there on pretty much everything. Twitter to pretty much every website is at Madtown Labs. If anyone wants to reach out with any questions or anything, feel free to get in touch.
Right on. Cool. Well, let's see here. Excellent. Okay, sweet. I'm going to go ahead and get started here, and should probably share my screen. Go with this one, and all right, everybody see it okay? Feel free to give me a raised hand or a hey, good job in the chat there. Oh yeah, thank you, Danielle, appreciate it. Vince, I see that hand. Yes, excellent. All right, so we've got. So we'll talk about using serverless services for serverful CMSs real quick. And a lot of this is going to be just kind of what I do on a day-to-day basis. I work for a company called Stratic, and that just was recently bought by Elementor. Pros and cons there. But what we do is we basically take a WordPress site, make it static, and then what we've done with our platform is also pull in we've created a bunch of integration services. So we integrate out of the box with Gravity Forms and Contact Form 7 and stuff like that. So, or WordPress search, we use Algolia to make it more of a like a serverless or like a Jamstack kind of experience. So I'm just going to kind of go through here really quick and define some terms. So what we're looking at, we'll just look at the kind of static and serverless part of this. But basically the idea here is just like defining what we're talking about and trying to understand the problem, right? So a traditional WordPress site has a server, and people go and they hit that server and it makes requests, and you can do something like wp-login.php, and you can log into the backend and stuff like that there. And so what we do in a static environment is that there's just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and basically whatever we can put on a CDN. So there's some other terms here, headless and decoupled, we're not really going to talk about. But on the flip side of this is something called serverless, which is basically custom on-demand scalable functions and services that provide a dynamic experience for your users. And I'll show you what all that means here in just a second. And the approach then that we take as basically the Jamstack approach, which used to be Jam was JavaScript, APIs, and markup. And now it's just like kind of a philosophy, it seems like, an approach to building sites. So you can take pieces here, so like an HTML, like basically a bundle of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript here, create a service over here for, we'll see like a geolocation IP service here in just a second. But if you're trying to figure out where users are coming from and show them specific content, something like that would be really helpful to you. And it's not something you can do kind of out of the box on a static site, right? Usually you have a server, you can check where their IP is coming from. There's a lot of services built around that, so you can identify what country an IP address is in and things like that. But not so in like static environments. So why would you use like specifically serverless services and things like that? So we do this at least with Stratic when there's not a server that's available. So what we do is we basically, once we have your WordPress site all scraped down and like made into static site, we shut it down if you're not using it. So that way your server isn't like contactable, it's not hackable, your database just isn't sitting out there and all that kind of stuff. So we just basically like shut everything down. So where you could have like a headless implementation where you have like a decoupled JavaScript application on the front end of that, and then like a WordPress kind of body, I guess you could say, on the back end, where you can still talk to the WordPress REST API or like set up WP GraphQL or something like that. In our case, we don't allow that, and basically just enhance security and stuff like that. So a lot of times those servers aren't reliable. So you can imagine being on like $2 a month hosting or whatever you can get it, dirt cheap for now on a regular server, but you're sharing that hosting with, tons of other people. Everybody's getting hammered for Black Friday. You're trying to do a geolocation service or something like that on your server, and your server just tanks. So you could offload a lot of that to like a serverless service or a serverless function. And then kind of in the same vein, if your server's not scalable or it's getting just too expensive to just like throw resources at a problem where you just have like a traffic problem, which is a good problem to have, and you just can't keep, you just can't keep adding servers or bigger servers and stuff like that. So there's a lot of reasons to use serverless services. And everything. So again, just kind of going through this, we've talked about static, but one of the things to note here is that I was just dealing with this twice today on like support actually, is that a lot of what WordPress does out of the box is like with admin Ajax or using like search queries and stuff like that to hit a server and everything. And so you lose that kind of functionality in a static environment. But what we do and what this is about is that you can create your own services to handle that to handle those like kind of built-in WordPress features that people usually rely on, but you can handle those in a serverless and static environment. So basically, and this is something from what I have said before, is that we build out static first serverless WordPress integration, so you don't have to completely rebuild your site. So this isn't like by the way, I should say this isn't like a pitch for static necessarily, but just saying like this is where I'm coming from with this presentation, because I've been working here for about 2 years now, and I've just been doing this all the time. So yeah, so is this going to be right for everybody? Probably not. It could be really helpful to some clients, especially clients that have basically really big what do I want to say? Yeah, just really big demand and stuff like that. It's also something fun to like play around with and everything. So we're going to look at 2 services really quick here. First one's Netlify. So I have the pricing page pulled up, mostly just to scroll way, way, way down here to show y'all the functions pricing. So what we're going to go through and do is basically have a function that we're hitting and calling. So this geolocation function. What we're going to do is we're going to hit an endpoint, so URL that has like, we'll see it in a second here. But basically, once we hit that, it's going to give us back where we are located, right? So, and I'm actually going to try. I should have tested this earlier, but we'll look at how like using like a VPN to test this and stuff. And I've got some other built-in things too. So Vince, I see you have a hand raised here. Do you have a question? Or is that just from before? Probably just.
I'm happy to unmute and then say I don't have a question.
Right on. Thank you.
Just lots of thoughts right now. So
yeah. So what we're looking at here is so we have this endpoint now, and what I've done and I'll show you some code for this here in just a second, but basically I've created a service on Netlify. Netlify has some built-in geolocation stuff that you can take advantage of. And what we're doing here is just hitting an endpoint that says geolocation. So geolocation in Madison, Wisconsin, this is great. I'm going to quick open up Proton VPN, and hopefully this won't disconnect me. And everything, but I'll try connecting to the ones here. Let's see if this works. Okay, hopefully everybody's still on the same call. And oh, it's not working. Okay, cool. So basically, you can go through and test this kind of stuff where you. I wonder if this actually will work in incognito. That is wrong. Oh no. Hello, I'm back. Is everybody still here?
Yep.
Excellent. So yeah, that definitely kicked me off because of the VPN change. But while I was gone, I was able to connect it to a different, just a different location. So now it was coming up as like New York City and stuff. Okay, great. So not connected anymore. But anyway, you can basically see how you can kind of test this out using a VPN and not giving a presentation at the same time. So what are we using this for? So this came up for a client that is based in Ireland and needed to show different pricing and everything. So what I'm going to do, and this is just a local install, kind of ran out of time to get this set up on Static properly, but we have here just a quick geo IP test. So what does this look like? So going back to the good old short codes Jason was just talking about, this geo IP content shortcode is actually something that is put out by WP Engine as a plugin, and they have a service integrated with their platform that allows you to put in basically the shortcode and then say what countries you want to show the content between the shortcode pieces here too. So if somebody's located in any of these countries here, so like Greece or France or, oh, Spain's not on here. Oh, there it is. Yes. Stuff like that. Like, then this would show up in euros, right? And then also if you want, they have this like not country parameter. So you can show this if you're not in this country. So they added in UK and Great Britain, for example. And then the last one is that if you wanted to show like pounds for somebody who's in the UK or Great Britain, coming up as a country code. So again, we're getting back our country code as US here. And you could build this down to be a little bit more granular as well, right? So like a subdivision of like New York. Well, I'm back to Wisconsin now. So this kind of thing, right? So now we're seeing here, this loads in as $59. So what's happening here behind the scenes? Let's pick up a couple pieces of information here for everybody. All right, so we've got a couple things happening here. Oop. All right, so and this is, of course, just like one way to do things. And let me bump this up. Hopefully everybody can see things okay. But what we're doing here is creating a short code and creating a endpoint for this information to be stored. So very quickly going through this, what we're doing is when the short code gets called, we're going through and seeing if there was anything stored in the database before, so get option, and basically taking all the attributes that are coming through. So the attributes would be anything in here, so country, and then the value of that attribute. So you have like the key value, so the key is the country and the value is the list of countries. Hashing that so there's like a unique key for us, and then going through and assigning all this. I will also, if you all want, I will totally share this code. There's nothing super special about it. And then what we're doing is storing that in the option and then sending through like basically just a blank div that has a data ID with the index on it. And this index is a hash value, so it's just like random numbers and letters. And it just, just kind of big, so it makes it nice and unique. Then what we do here is set a route in the WP REST API for all the information coming from that option. So if we do something like this on the geo IP test, let's do maybe JSON / this / what is it again? Geo IP content. Should see what's there. Right. So what we have is the data ID here, and then if it's a country, and then the content for that country, if it's a not country, and then the content for that particular div, and so on. So, so basically what happens then is we add some JavaScript, And that JavaScript is right here. So there's a lot here happening, but basically what's happening is that when the page loads up, we see if there's any of those empty divs that exist with one of those data IDs on it. If we do, if we have that, we store it, and we kind of loop through those things and see what we need to replace. In the meantime, we go and hit that REST API endpoint here, get this information back, and we see if any of these data IDs match up with, actually, it's the reverse. We see if any of the data IDs that we got from the page loading match up with any of these data IDs. So just kind of go through and say, like, do we have this, 41F4A data ID? And then if we do, great, we've got the information for that here. So what ends up happening then is that we have a local price here. So the other thing that I'm doing is saving a cookie. And this is actually just something that you can do. Basically, you're just catching a response, right? So you're getting a cookie, checking for a cookie, saving the cookie if it's there. So what does that mean? So let me pull this guy out way over here. And if you go to, this is where your cookies get stored in Chrome, or at least where you can access them. And we have this geo IP info. Let me see if I can blow this up as well. So in here, you can see the same information that we're getting back from our edge function. And it is the geo. We have the country code is the US. And let's see if I can sneak in here at this. So if we were to change this code to something like FR for France, right, and refresh our page, we would see a euro coming through. The other thing that, since this caches the geolocation for the person, it's not always making a request and hitting that endpoint. So if this is deleted, can refresh that, and we get a new cookie that has the fresh info on it. And you can see in the network tab here too, if I do this, it's going to go hit that geolocation API endpoint here with these headers. So this was, I'm sharing this because I thought this was a really fun project to do. It was, great. It was great, this experience working and getting something like this done for a customer that's coming on. They basically had this service that they've been using for years. And when they came over to our platform, they didn't have it anymore. So we just built this out really quick for them. And then after we did that proof of concept, we're actually going to be integrating this geolocation service into our system. So that's one thing. And that's a serverless service that you can create. And the code for it is really, really straightforward. This is the GitHub for the Netlify Edge functions. And here's their geolocations example. And you can, this is all comments here. So it's basically just this and then returning this context. And this is all like on a Netlify function for them. So maybe in like a different presentation, we could walk through like actually setting up these services and what that would look like. Let me know if y'all are interested in that. But another service that their proof of concept for is basically like a breaking news service. So with Static and other kind of server-side generated static site generators, we have like a publish time, right? So you come over to your blog here and you type everything out that you want to do, and you click publish or update, and usually traditionally that's live on your WordPress site, right? With Static, because we basically like scrape down your site and then serve a static version of that, you have to run we call it a publish, or like a static publish or something like that. So you have to run like a publish on your site. So you can run a full publish where you're scraping everything again and republishing that, a quick publish where we keep track of changes, and those changes are the things that get scraped and published, or a selective publish where you're just publishing like one page or one resource, like a JavaScript file or something like that. So, for news sites, we've had a couple news sites that have come over to us. sometimes they're serving like breaking news, right? Like car crash happened here, or investigation is happening here. We're updating in real time, and so they were wondering how that could work for them. So with the geolocation stuff and with Netlify in general, this is kind of a read-only thing, right? It's just functions. So you're just running a script and getting information back, but there's no persistent data storage. So there's not like a database that you're interacting with here. You can hook up other services like a Supabase or something like that are these like kind of Jamstacky database services. You could use like Firebase, like Google, right, for all this kind of stuff. But we use Amazon Web Services for our architecture, and so basically like we're looking for something that could be used and stored on AWS, right? So just kind of quick making proof of concept. There's a platform called Serverless, serverless.com, and it's a framework that you can use to interact with different cloud providers. So Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, Azure, the list kind of goes on. And what they do is they basically give you like a programming API so that you can basically do a lot of configuration. And then if you need to run on Google Cloud Platform or AWS or something like that, you can basically just deploy your changes and just kind of say, I'm not going to use AWS for this function. I'm going to use Google Cloud Platform, or I'm not going to use Google Cloud Platform for this database. I need a document, like a DynamoDB database or something like that. So basically, you've used this this framework to set up configuration for AWS, and it's all code related and everything. But basically, what we are able to do with this very quickly is to do a few things. One is to create a database where we can persist data, and then two, create two API endpoints where we can post and create like a post with information in it, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second, and then where we can get information out of that database from a post ID. So the idea is that we create basically like a breaking news custom post type, and we just say something like, let's do like cat in a tree, and something like that. And let's say that, they want, and this is again just on my local, I'm not running this on Static right now, but basically like you can just publish that and see your breaking news article here. And you can see that when this loads up, you'll see like last updated here. And yeah, so this would show like when it's last updated. Anyway, so I pulled up a cat in a tree picture here, for example, and what I'm going to do really quick is, this is the front end, and this will be the, let's do edit post here. All right, so this is the back end here. So you can watch what's happening here as I just kind of go through and type. So cat in a tree, and I'm going to do Command S to save it. And you can see it pop up on the front end without like a refresh, right? So got an image, and we'll do insert from URL. So there's that, save it, and it's popping up on the front end, right? So you get the idea here. This cat is stuck. Okay. So save it again, it pops up without refreshing. So what's happening here, right? The idea for, again, breaking news and news agencies was to give them a way to basically publish this and then kind of do a very quick publish to get the kind of shell, I guess you could say, of the story out there. And then as more information was coming in, they could just basically start saving that information, and it would update this remote service, and then it would update on the front end of their site, and then people could see when the last time it was updated here and everything. So what does that look like as far as code goes? Let's do this and this and this, and actually I don't want this one, I want this one. So the breaking news service is divided up into two things. So we have a WordPress plugin that creates the post types, and then we have a serverless service thing that has these functions where, move this over a little bit. So you have a get function where you're getting the post back for the front end and displaying it, the post information. And then you have a create function where you're console logging a bunch of information out. But basically you're hitting Amazon's endpoint and then it's storing it in DynamoDB. So what that looks like on the back end here is that we have a post table or breaking news table here. And we can see that there's several post IDs here. And if I was to go ahead and create, oh, that's not how we do it anymore. This is how we do it. Lost dog or something like that. Publish it. And then if I come back over to, so this is DynamoDB. This is the breaking news table. You would see this new post. So 18, lost dog, post 18. There. So that's how we're basically referencing these things. And then we could actually go in and see what this looks like. So there's no content to the post yet, but if I go there, woof, save that, as I save it, and then come back over here and refresh, you can see that there's now like a paragraph text. So this is sending over all the block information that you would get from Gutenberg. So anyway, again, these are serverless services that you can use in all sorts of environments. You can use these in a server full environment. You can use them, obviously on static files and things like that. But because it's like WordPress and because it's like you can kind of build your own serverless service, there's really like kind of limitless options for what you can do with all of this stuff. These were just two examples of things that we could build out or that we have built out and stuff like that. And yeah, anytime you get like information, this is what I love about APIs and stuff, is that anytime you get information, you can kind of do whatever you want with it and return it as you like. So it's this has been a lot of fun to kind of explore and everything. So if y'all have any questions about that, I'd love to know. And yeah, if you would like some of this code, I'll definitely put this up as like a repository, like a GitHub repository or something like that soon. So yeah, Vince, what's up?
Yeah. So what, and maybe you can't answer this, but I'm curious about what the plans are to integrate Static and Elementor together, like as a service, or is that coming? Can you say?
Yeah. I don't, so Elementor has their cloud, Elementor Cloud.
Okay.
As already, and that was like their hosting service where it was like tuned and primed for Elementor stuff. So yeah, when we came on board, there was like questions like, is this replacing cloud? Is cloud gonna like take this over and stuff like that? And the answer is not right now. None of that. So everything that works, because there's plenty of stuff that like Static doesn't support right now, and especially with like Elementor functionality, the main thing that we keep running into are like blocks or plugins or things that support admin Ajax that you just can't use on Static. So a lot of, for example, like if you have like a post page that has like tabs of category filters or something on top, and you click those and they like animate up, or just kind of run like an Ajax call to get more posts and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that those just aren't going to work on Static out of the box. Like we would have to like redo all that kind of stuff to work. So yeah, but yeah, like I built out like the Elementor forum support, which was a massive request from a lot of people that were on our platform. And we've got other things that are compatible, whether they actually do just work out of the box because they're just more presentational, or that we've actually built integrations for. So
cool. All right, good to know.
Yeah. What's up, Nick?
Hey, that was really cool. The breaking news example you showed there on the client, is that using WebSocket or something to push the changes, or how do the changes get to the client?
Yeah, so you could do that. I'm just polling.
Okay.
So yeah, every second or 5 seconds or
Okay.
whatever it is, just
Yeah.
like sending a request to the endpoint. So one thing I didn't show, and I can show this really quick, is that when you run a breaking news example and you're deploying it through the like CLI typically, so serverless has like a CLI, so you can do like serverless. Gotta make sure I spell this right. You can just do help, and it has a bunch of different commands that you can use here. But you can see here that when you deploy the service that I was talking about, you get an endpoint. You get two endpoints here. One where you can post, which is when you're creating the service, or sorry, creating the news story to be stored on the database side of things, and then a get where you can, based on the ID, the post ID, you can get that story back. So yeah, so this is where that's coming. That information is coming from as well. And this is also, you can see right here that it's dev, so you can have different stages: dev, test, prod, whatever you want to call it. Where you, so this could be like, your staging environment or something like that, where you run all your tests and build new things and break stuff. And then you could have another slash prod or something like that, where that's your actual live service and stuff. So yeah.
Nice.
Right on, right on. Cool. Any other questions? It's 3:00, so cool. If y'all are not in the Slack group and you want to get in, hit me up. My email is n8finch@gmail.com. And sometimes we talk, sometimes we don't. But yeah, if there's any like questions or like inter meetup communication, it'll probably be in there. So groovy. Thanks for coming, y'all. Hope you have a great day. Enjoy the sunshine.
Thanks, Nate.
Talk to y'all later.
Thank you.
Bye.
There we go. Stop recording.